So hello guys, in this video tutorial series we will be making an endless runner game for Android devices using Unity engine. This series will be completely beginner friendly, so if you haven't done any game development before, then also you can follow along. We will cover each and everything in this series, from downloading and installing Unity to exporting our project to Android devices. So first of all, to download Unity engine, open up your browser and search Unity download Unity Hub. So click on this first link, which is unity3d.com/getunity/download. So on this page you can find the download button to download Unity Hub. You can also download Unity directly, but Unity Hub will help us to manage our projects and other Unity versions very easily, which I will show you in a moment. So click on this download Unity Hub button and download Unity Hub. After that, install Unity Hub. I have already downloaded and installed it. That's why I am not going to do it again. So it is as simple as downloading and installing any other software. So it should be pretty straightforward. So download Unity Hub. After downloading Unity Hub, it will look like this. Your project's feed would be empty because you would have not created any projects. So we will quickly talk about some tabs. So here it is a learn tab. So here there are lots of tutorials which you can watch from Unity, and this is a community, forums and blogs, and here it is installs. So here we can download different Unity versions. Currently I have downloaded 2019.4.20 F1 LTS. This LTS means long-term support. So whenever we download any version, it is recommended to download LTS version so that we don't face any difficulties in future. We will download a new version in a moment, but first of all we have to do some necessary things. So first of all we have to generate a license. So click on this settings button, and then here you can click on license management. I have already activated a personal license, but you would not have this. So you have to log in your Unity account to generate license. So click on login. So it will prompt you to the Unity Hub sign in. So here you can sign in with your email and password. If you haven't created a Unity ID yet, so click here, create one, and you can create it easily. It is as simple as creating any Gmail account. So once I will log in, then we will continue. So I have logged into my Unity account. So from here we can click on activate new license. Here we can choose either Unity Personal or Unity Pro. For this series, the personal would be more than enough. If you are running any enterprise or big company which is making more than $100,000 per year, then you have to take subscription of Unity. But in our case, it is fine to download Unity Personal, and from here it will ask for these two options. So just click on this. I don't use Unity in a professional capacity, or if you use it for a professional capacity, then click on this first option and hit on done. I have already activated my account, so that's why I'm not going to do it again, but you have to just click on done and your license will be created. So after doing that, you would be able to download new Unity versions. So here click on install tab, and from here we can add new Unity versions. So click on add button here, and it will ask you to download any of these versions. So these are official releases, and these are alpha releases, and early versions of Unity which are in testing mode. So it is recommending us to download this LTS version, which is long-term support version. So we will click on next, and from here, if you have not installed any IDE on your computer, then click on this. It will download Microsoft Visual Studio Community Edition 2019. You can also use VS Code with Unity, but for this series we will use Visual Studio. So go ahead and download this. Click on this checkbox, and we will be making this game for Android, so we need to install Android build support. So expand this and make sure you have selected these checkboxes: Android SDK and NDK tools and OpenJDK. So your selection should look like this. So if you are done, then you can hit on next, and it will ask us for accepting terms and conditions. So go ahead and read these terms and conditions and click on next, and you will be able to download. It will take some time to download this Unity version on your computer. After downloading this, we will be able to create new projects. I have already this version 2019.4.20 F1, which is fine because our game is not very complicated, so the version will not matter that much, so you can download any version. So now we will click on Projects tab, and from here we will create new project. So click on New, and then it will ask us to create either 2D or 3D, or there are many other options like Universal Render Pipeline, which is not the topic of this video. So we will be making a 2D game. So click on 2D, and from here we can name our project. So this will be an endless runner game. So go ahead and name. You can name it whatever you want. I will name it endless runner Android, and you can save your project anywhere. I am going to save it in F drive and in Unity projects 3D folder. Actually, you can save it anywhere you want. So go ahead and click on create, so it will create a new project. So in this video we will talk about different tabs in Unity engine, and we will get familiar with the editor. So since we are developing our game for Android, then we have to change this aspect ratio. So click on this game window. This game window is a preview window for our game. So whenever we hit this play button, then our game will be played in this window. So we will be developing this game in portrait mode. So click on this free aspect and change it to 1920 by 1080 portrait. So it will change itself from free aspect to portrait mode. But when you click on this, you will not get these many options, because our current project is on a PC platform. So you have to convert platform from PC to Android. So to convert the platform, we have to first of all click on File and click on Build Settings. Then you will have this icon on this PC, Mac and Linux standalone option. So go ahead and click on Android and hit Switch Platform. Here you will get Switch Platform button like this. So click on Android and hit Switch Platform. So your platform will be switched from PC to Android, and then you will get these options for different aspect ratios. So it will take some time to switch platforms. So once you have switched the platform, then turn it into a portrait mode. So let's talk about different tabs. So first of all, it is a scene view. So in this scene view, we can add different game objects. So everything in Unity is game object. So just like here it is main camera, so it is also a game object which contains some transform properties like position, rotation, scale, and every game object contains some components. So for this game object main camera, it has camera component. We can add different components by clicking on add component. Unity has many components. So this was a scene view in which we can add our game objects. Then then next comes our game view. So I have already talked about it. So in the game view we can preview our game. So whenever we hit play button, then this will preview our game. We can see the game being played here. So next comes our hierarchy. So in the hierarchy we can see the different game objects that we have created. Currently it has main camera, and we can see as many game objects as we create here. So like if I right click here and create an empty game object, so I will click on create empty. So we can see that it is added in hierarchy. Next up is our projects tab here. So in the projects tab there is an assets folder. So in this assets folder we can keep our scenes, scripts, animation, prefabs, and etc. So it will be more manageable for bigger games. So whenever our projects gets bigger, we will be able to manage it efficiently. So we will create some folders right now so that we can manage our project. So click on this asset folder and right click and create, then folder, and we will name it prefabs. So what are prefabs in Unity? So prefabs are like you have to create the prefabs only once, and then you can use it as many times as you want, and whenever you want to change the game objects that are prefabs, then you have to only change the original prefab that you have here. It is a little bit confusing, but we will see it in upcoming videos. So next up we will create another folder for scripts. So create scripts folder, in which we will add our scripts. So next is our console tab. So in the console we can see if our script has any error or warning, it will be displayed here. So we will be able to see and debug it. So this was a brief introduction, and I forgot about this tab. This is an inspector tab, so in which we can see the properties of the game object. So our game object, let's click on main camera. So main camera has some properties and components like transform camera component and audio listener. So this camera component has some properties. So these components and properties are displayed in this inspector view, inspector tab. So this was a quick introduction of the tabs in Unity. So to create our player, we will right click on hierarchy, and okay, so first of all we will create our sprite for the player. So go ahead and click on assets folder, right click and create a new folder and call it sprites. Inside that, right click and then create sprites and then a square, and let's keep the name as square. Now click on this sprite and change its sprite mode to single from polygon and hit on apply. Then we can drag and drop this square sprite in our scene view. So drag and drop this into our scene view, and we will rename this to player. So to rename any game object in Unity, we can hit F2. So hit F2 and rename it to player. So now we can change its color by changing the color value, color property in the sprite renderer component of our player sprite. So click on this color and you can give it any color you want. I will give it slightly darker color. So now we will create a ground. So click on this player and press Ctrl D. So it will duplicate our player and rename it. So press F2 and rename it to ground. Now we will change the position of our ground. So first of all we will change the scale. So Y scale should be 5 and X scale would be 20, and then go onto the scene view and click on this move tool here. There are different tools in Unity like hand tool, move tool, rotate and scale, and these are for UI rectangle tool. So click on this move tool and press Ctrl, hold Ctrl and drag our ground slightly below. So now we can see that our ground is below the player. So now click on the ground and we can change the color of ground also. So click on this color and change its color from white to something oranges. You can color it anything you want. So now we will change the main camera color, so which is this background color. So to change this background color from blue to anything you want, you have to click on this background and you can change it from here. So let's make it white and we will change the ground color to it like this. You can color it anything you want. So we have now created our player and our ground. So in this video we will add jump functionality for our player. So first of all we have to add colliders to our player and ground. Colliders, we add colliders so that we can detect collisions between our player and ground and between our player and obstacles. So click on this player and here in this inspector tab click on add component and search for box collider and click on this box collider 2D to add box collider 2D to our player. Next up we will also add box collider 2D to our ground. So in the scene view we can also see colliders. So click on add component and hit box collider 2D. So we can see this green line, this green border is our box collider. So for the player to detect ground, we have to also add another collider. So click on add component and click on box collider 2D. So for this second collider, click on scene view and zoom in a little bit so that we can see our player, and click on this edit collider button. Now you can edit the boundaries of our collider. So click on this bottom edge and drag it little bit further So we are doing this to detect ground check. So if our player is standing on ground, then we will be able to retrieve the boolean value that it is grounded, and if it is not on ground, that means the player is currently in jump state, then we will get is grounded to false. So to detect the collision, we have to make this second collider, which is a little bit bigger than the first one. We have to make it is trigger. So whenever we make a collider is trigger, then we can retrieve the information of the game object that it hits. So we will make it as is trigger. So now we will add some tags to our ground and our player. So basically tags are used to identify the game object in our script. So click on this ground, and here in the tag, click on this untag and click on add tag, and we will add a new tag. So click on this plus icon and name it as ground and hit on save. So now once again click on ground and change it from untag to ground. Now do the same for the player, but this time we don't have to create a new tag because Unity already has a player tag. So click on this player tag to add it. So after adding player tag to the player, we can create our movement script. So click on the scripts folder and right click, then create a new C# script and name it player movement. And hit enter. So the scripting language for Unity is C#, so we will write our game logic in this language. Now double click on this player movement script. So if you have installed Visual Studio while installing Unity, then it will open up our script in Visual Studio. But if you are using any other IDE, then it will open up this solution in that IDE if you have configured it with Unity. So we will quickly talk about these two functions, which are void start and void update. So void start is called at the beginning of our game, so it is called only once, and this void update is called per frame, means if your game is running at 60 fps, then it will be called 60 times per second. So we will quickly make some variables for our player movement script. First variable is private. So private, it will be a boolean, so bool, and is grounded. So this is grounded variable will help us to determine whether our player is standing on ground or not. So whenever our game starts, our is grounded variable would be false by default, and now we can create another variable for our players jump force. So create private, no, this time we will make it public so that we can change its value from inspector. So make private float jump force, and we will add the jump force value from inspector. So save this script and go into Unity, and now we can add this script to our player. So click on player and add player movement script to the player. Now we can see that our jump force variable is visible here because we have made it public, and our is grounded variable is private. That's why it's not appearing here. So whenever we make any variable private, it is not visible in the inspector. We can also add serialized field to make it visible in our inspector. Now you can see, first of all we have to save the script, and now our is grounded variable is also visible in our inspector. So whenever you want to make any variable private and you also want to make it visible in the inspector, then you have to add this serialized field. So now we will add this, we will add a rigid body component to our player. So we can use Unity's physics engine. So what will it do is, whenever we add a physics rigid body 2D component, rigid body 2D, so our player will be affected by gravity. So right now if I hit play, then you can see that our player will fall down like this. So now we are using the Unity's physics engine. So click on this constraint and freeze rotation on z-axis. So our player does not, our player will not be able to rotate on the z-axis. So now we can start creating our jump functionality. So the Unity has some functions for detecting collisions. So make a private on trigger enter 2D. So it will be called whenever our player will enter any our player will collide with any game object. So whenever our player collides with any game object, then we will check if our player, here it is a collision, so we will copy it and paste it, our collision dot compare tag. So if our player collides with ground, with the game object with ground tag, then we will make is grounded is equals to true, and same as this we will create another function called on trigger exit. So private void on trigger exit 2D, copy this if statement and paste it here. We can make this is grounded variable false whenever our player exit from the whenever our player exits from our ground. So make it false. Now we are able to detect the ground check. So in the update function we will check for input. So let's make an if statement and say in if input dot get mouse button down, and in the brackets zero, and we will also check for ground. So if is grounded, so what it want to say is that if the player presses left mouse button and is grounded, so if both are true, then and then this if statement will be executed. So this get mouse button down 0 also works with touch input. So whenever we tap on the screen, it will also take it as true. So whenever this is done, then we will add some force, some upward force to our player. So for that we have to get our player's rigid body. So let's make a private variable, private rigid body 2D, and name it as player. So to get our player's rigid body 2D component, we will go in start function and we will say player is equals to get component, and the component we want to get is rigid body 2D, and we will close this statement with a semicolon. So this statement will get our rigid body 2D component from player, and it will assign it to this player variable. So now we can add an upward force to our player. So type in player dot add force, and it will take an argument as vector 2. So make a new vector 2. So vector 2 has two values, which is x and y. So we don't want to add any force in x-axis, so make it 0, and for y-axis we will add jump force into, we will multiply it with some scale factor, so let's say 100. So it will add this force in y-axis. So our player movement script is completed. So save it and go into the Unity. Now click on player and add jump force value here. So we will start with 5 and let's hit play. So whenever we hit our left mouse button, then it will jump. It will also work with a touch input. So currently it is a bit high, so we will make it 3 and hit play. Now okay, let's make it 4. So we can see that currently whenever player is standing on ground, then our is grounded variable is true, and as soon as I press the left mouse button, it will jump and our is grounded variable will be false. So now you can see it is false, and whenever it touches the ground, then it will be true. So this was a jump functionality for our player. So we have created player movement in this video. So in this video we will create obstacles for our game. So to create obstacle, click on sprites folder and drag and drop the square sprite into the hierarchy. So now we can see that our square sprite, which is our obstacle, so let's rename it to obstacle. So it is above our player, that's why we cannot see it. So click on the player, click on the obstacle and drag it to the right of the player, and we can also change its color. So click on obstacle and then change its color from white to something red. You can give it any color you want. So now we can change the scale of the obstacle, so make it 5 on the y-axis, and now that we have created our obstacle, we can also add a box collider 2D to our obstacle. So let's add the box collider 2D and make it as is trigger, so that we can detect the collisions with our player. So now we can make our obstacle as a prefab. So we can click on our prefab folder, but before that click on the obstacle and reset its transform. So right click on transform and hit reset. So it will reset its position to 0, 0, 0, and it will also reset its scale. So click on a y-axis scale and change it to 5 once again. So now click on this obstacle and drag and drop it into our prefabs folder. So let's drag and drop it. So now we can see that this obstacle has become blue. So that means that it is now a prefab. So now that we have created our obstacle, we can delete it because we have created a prefab out of it. So now we can create a spawner to spawn our obstacle. So before we create our spawner, let's create a obstacle script. So right click and create a C# script and name it as obstacle. So obstacle and hit enter. Then open it up in Visual Studio. So let's double click it and open it up in Visual Studio. So now we will make some variables. So now we will create some variables. So we will create a speed variable for our obstacle. So create public float speed, and we will change its value from the inspector. So now in the update method, we can modify our obstacle's position. So to access the position, we can write transform.position, so that we can modify the position at each frame. So write transform.position, and we will make it equals to vector 3. So let's make it equal to vector 3 dot left, so that we can move our obstacle from right to left, that means towards our player. So let's make it vector 3 dot left, and we can multiply this with our speed variable. So let's multiply it with our speed variable, and we can also multiply it with time dot delta time. In fact, we have to multiply it with time dot delta time, so that we can make our game frame rate independent. That means if our game is running at 60 fps, then also our speed would be constant, and if our frame rate is higher than that, then also our speed will be constant. So the frame rate will not affect our speed. That's why we are multiplying our uh, speed with time.delta time. So now we have to add plus sign in front of this equal, so that we increment our position, obstacles position, to the speed variable each frame. So after doing that, we can save this script and go to the Unity editor. And now if we hit play, so first of all, let's add the script to our obstacle prefab. So add component and search for obstacle and add it. And for now we will make speed as 4. So let's type in 4, and then if we hit play, then we can see that our obstacle will move from right to left, but we can drag and drop our obstacle and move it to the right and a little bit downwards. So now if we hit on play, so now we can see that our obstacle is moving from right to left. So that now we have created the obstacle, we can create the spawner to spawn our obstacle at random height. So to create a spawner, we will right click in the hierarchy and create an empty game object, and we will rename it to spawner. So rename it to spawner and hit enter. So now we will drag it to the right of the player. So we will make its y position to 0 and z position to 0, and now we can create a script for it. So create a new C# script and call it spawner and hit enter, and click on the spawner and drag and drop the script to it, and now double click on spawner script to open it in Visual Studio. Now to instantiate our obstacle, we need a reference. So we will make a public game object because our obstacle is of type game object. So we will name it as obstacle. Now we also need a minimum height and maximum height for our obstacle. So let's create a public variable so that we can modify it in inspector. So public float min height, and we will copy it. So let's copy it and paste it, and then we will change it to max height. So for the min height, for the max height, we will say, let's first add our min height. So we will default it to minus 3.5 f, and for the max height we will say minus 5 f. So for the max height we will say minus 5 f, but here we can see that our max height would be minus 3.5 f and min height would be minus 5 f because they have minus sign in front of them. So in the update method, we can make a timer to check the time intervals between each spawn. So let's create a public variable. So we will create a public variable. So create public float, and we will name it time to spawn. So create time to spawn, and we will default it to 1.5 seconds. So after 1.5 seconds it will spawn a new obstacle. So now create another variable as private float timer, so that we can keep track of the timer. So we will check in our update method that if our timer is greater than time to spawn, then we will instantiate our obstacle. So we will create a new game object and we will name it as new obstacle. So we will name it as a new obstacle, and now we will make it equal to instantiate, and in the parenthesis we will say obstacle. So it will instantiate the obstacle, which is our obstacle prefab, and after instantiating the new obstacle we can modify its position. So we will say new object dot transform. So dot transform dot position is equals to transform dot position, that means the position of this spawner, and we will also add a new vector 3. So type in new vector 3, and we don't want to modify its x value, so make it as 0, and we will make the y value randomize between two numbers, which is min height and max height, so that we can get a random height for our obstacle. So let's pass in min height and max height, and for the z we can pass in 0. And now we also need to destroy this new obstacle after some time. So we can do this by typing destroy. The destroy is inbuilt method in Unity, so type in destroy, then pass in the game object that we want to destroy, so new obstacle, and the time after which we want to destroy that. So let's say 10 seconds. So after doing all of this we can reset our timer to 0. So now we can reset our timer to 0. Now we can save this script, and so now go back to Unity, and we can save this script and click on this spawner, and we can see that there is an obstacle field. So drag and drop the obstacle prefab into that field, and now we can hit play. So it will spawn the obstacle at random height, but it is not spawning. So let's see what is the error. So let's go to the Visual Studio Code, and let's find out what is happening. So here, after the if statement, we we have to add one line, which is timer plus equals to time dot delta time, because we need to increment our timer on each frame. So we will increment it by time dot delta time. So now if we go back to Unity and hit play, then we can see that now our obstacles are spawning at random height, but they are spawning in front of the ground right now. So we can see that they are spawning in front of the ground, that they are not spawning in front of the ground, but they are rendering in front of the ground. So now to make the obstacle spawn behind the ground, we have to change the ordering layer of our ground. So let's click on the let's click on the ground and change its order in layer to 1 from 0. So let's change it to 1 so that it renders above everything else. So now if we hit play, then we will be able to see that our obstacles are now spawning behind the ground. So as you can see, they are spawning behind the ground. So in this video we have added our obstacle. Hello guys. So now our obstacles are spawning at random height. So when we hit play, then we can see that our obstacles are spawning at random height, and we can jump by clicking the left mouse button. So currently the player is going through these obstacles, so we don't want this. We want that whenever our player collides with these obstacles, then the game should be over. So to manage the game over and pause game functionality, we will create a game manager object. So right click and create an empty game object, and we will rename it to game manager. So rename it to game manager. Now we will create a game manager script for this game object. So right click and create a new C# script and name it as game manager. Now double click on it. So now we will create a public variable for detecting the game over. So now we will write public static pool, and we will name it as is game over. So whenever our game is over, then this variable will be true, and at any other time this variable would be false. So whenever our game starts, this game over variable should be false. So let's say is game over to false. And now we can go into the obstacle script, and here we can make a onTriggerEnter 2D method, which is inbuilt method for detecting collisions in Unity. So type in onTriggerEnter 2D, and we will say if collision, which is this variable, this one. So dot compare tag, and we
will say player. So what it want to say is that whenever our obstacle collides with any game object, and if that game object contains this tag player, then it will execute this if statement. So we will write is game over to true. So we can't directly access, we have to write game manager, which is the script that we just created, dot is game over to true. We can access this is game over variable like this because we have made it static in the game manager script. So we can access this variable by writing the script name and dot, then the variable name if that variable is static. Then here we will print a message. So let's say debug.log, and we will pass in the message that we want to print. So we will say game over. And now we can save this script and go back to the Unity. Now we have to assign this script to the game manager. So drag and drop the game manager script to the game manager game object. And now when we save this project, so hit Ctrl S, and if we hit play now, we can see whenever our player collides with the obstacle, the message will appear in the console that game is over. So in the next video we will create a game over screen so that we can pause the game whenever the player collides with the obstacle, and then we will ask the player if he wants to restart the game or if he wants to quit. So thank you for watching this video. So now we can see that whenever our player collides with any obstacle, then we have this game over message in the console. So now we will create a game over screen. So whenever our player collides with the obstacle, then the game will be freezed and our game over screen will appear. So to create that screen, we need to click on hierarchy and create a new UI element, and we will create a panel. So it will automatically create canvas and event system. So to render any UI element in Unity, we need canvas. Click on this panel and rename it to game over panel. So let's rename it to game over panel. Now we will right click on this game over panel and create a new UI element, and we will this time create a button, and we will rename this button to retry. Now we can see that our canvas is quite bigger than our main camera. So to fix that, click on canvas and change its render mode from screen space overlay to screen space camera, and click on this pixel perfect, and as a render camera, drag and drop our main camera into this slot. And now you can see that our canvas is same as our main camera. So now we will also change its UI scale mode. So click on this UI scale mode and change it from constant pixel size to scale with screen size, and we will give the reference resolution as 1920 by 1080. So let's say 1920 by 1080. So we will click on this match parameter and we will make it as 0.5. So it will scale the UI elements according to the screen size. Now we will click on this text and we will rename it to retry. Now click on this retry button and change its width to, let's say, 600 by 400, or let's say 600 by 200. Now drag this retry button slightly upward. We can see that our UI elements are rendering behind this player and everything else. So to fix this, click on the canvas and change its order in layer to 1. Now click on this text and we can change its font size. So let's make it 100. And now click on this best fit. We can also make it bold and we will change its color. So now we can also add shadow to this text. So click on add component and add a shadow, and we can set this effect distance. Now we can also give the shadow to this button and play with the effect distance to get the desired result. Now we will duplicate this retry button, so press Ctrl D and we will rename it to main. Now we will also change the text to main and we will drag this main button slightly below. Now we can go to the obstacle script and we will comment this debug.log line. And now whenever our game is over, then we will freeze our game. So we will say time.timescale is equals to 0. So it will freeze our game. And now we can go to the game manager script and we will create a variable for our game over screen. So create public game object and then game over screen. Game over screen. So at the start of our game over screen would not be visible. So let's say game over screen dot set active and pass in false. Now we will check for the game over in the update method. So if is game over, so when our game is over, then we will copy this statement and we will paste it here and we will say game over screen dot set active to true. And also whenever our game starts, we will reset the time scale to 1. So let's say time.timescale is equals to 1. Now we will also make a separate function for retry. So let's make a new function, public void, and name it as retry. Now we will use Unity's scene management, and to use that we need to add the namespace at the top of the script. So write using Unity engine dot scene management, and now whenever we press the retry button we can say scene manager dot set active scene. Sorry, we will say scene manager dot load scene to load the scene, and we will pass in scene manager dot get active scene. So it will get the current scene and we will get its name. So now it will restart our scene and our game over screen will now become false. So let's go back to the Unity, and here we can change the canvas reference resolution to 1080 by 1920. 1080 by 1920 because it is portrait mode. Now we can drag and drop our game over panel to this game over screen field, and now we can see that whenever we hit play, then when we collide with the obstacle, then the game will be freezed and our game over screen will appear. Now currently these buttons are not working, so to make them work we need to click on this retry button, and we will click on this on click list, and we will hit this plus icon, and in this slot we will drag our game manager game object, and we will select retry function from the game manager script. So whenever we click on this retry, it will execute that function. Currently it will give us an error because we haven't added this scene to our project yet. So click on the file and build setting, then click on scenes and add our sample scene to this window, and now Ctrl S to save. And now when we hit play, we can see that whenever we collide with the obstacle, it brings up the game over screen, and when we click on this retry, it will restart the game. So we can see that now currently this main menu button is not working, but we will make it work. Hello guys, so in the previous video we have created the game over screen. So currently you can disable this game over panel like this. Now before we create the scoring system, we will change some settings in the spawner. So for the time to spawn, I have assigned 1.8, and for min height -4, and for max height -2.2. You can play around with these values if you want, but these are the values that I am going to use in this game. So now to make the scoring system, we will first make the UI for our score. So right click on the canvas and create new UI element, and this time create a text, and we will rename it to score. Now click on this icon here and click here top center to anchor it onto the top center of our canvas. Now we will change its width and height. So select this rect tool. Now we can change its width so we will make it as the width of the canvas, and for the height we will type in 300, or let's make it 200. Now move this score text to the upper side of our canvas, and we will write score by default. Change it to bold, and for the font size we will go with let's say 80. Now click on this alignment and align it horizontally and vertically to the center. Now click on this best fit. Now we will change its color to red. We will give it an outline, so type in outline. Now we will also give it a shadow, and change the effect distance. Now we have created our UI for displaying the score. So now go to the game manager script, and we will make a public variable to reference the score text. So make a public text. So if it doesn't suggest you this text, then you have to include this namespace here using unityengine.ui. So we will name our variable as score txt, and we will also make another variable which is private float and score. So it will keep track of our score. So now at the beginning of our game our score would be 0, so make it 0. Now in the update method we will increment our score variable, so let's increment it by time.delta time. So time.delta time. Now in the update method we will also change the score text. So let's write score text dot text. So we are accessing the text property of our score text component. So let's go to the Unity and click on this score text, and we can see that we are accessing this text property of this text component here. So now we will make it equal to score plus our score variable. So we are adding a string and a float. So now let's save this script and go back to the Unity, and now we have to assign this score text to our game manager. So let's drag and drop this score text to the game manager's score text field. Now hit play button, and you will see that our score is increasing, but it is displaying the float value. So we have to convert this float into an integer. So let's get back to the script, and we will here typecast this score variable, which is float, into integer. So let's typecast it from float to integer. Now save the script and go back to the Unity. Now if we hit play, then we can see that now it only displays the integer values. So that's it for this video. We have implemented the scoring system for our game. So in this video we are going to create a pause menu. So we are going to duplicate the game over screen to create our pause menu screen, because it's quite similar. So first of all, to create the pause menu, we have to create a pause button. So let's duplicate this retry button. So press Ctrl D to duplicate and drag it outside of this game over panel. So now you can see. Let's rename it to pause, and we will also rename its text. So we will use this OR kind of symbol for this pause button. You can find this key on the backward slash on the keyboard. So after that we will resize this button. So let's make it 100 by 100, and we will also align it to left. And now we will go into the scene view, double click on the pause, and we will resize this text boundaries so that it can fit well. Okay, and we will also disable the shadow for the text. Now you can see it is looking like a pause button. So now click on this move tool, and we will actually, let's just type in the values. So click on the pause button, and for the position X we will say 90, and for the position Y we will say -90. So it will be positioned at the left side of our screen. So now that we have created the pause button, we can go into the game manager script. Now we also have to create the reference for our button. So let's make a public. Okay, so since it's a button, then we will call it by the onClick event. So let's make a public function, public void pause game, and here we will say that time.timescale is equals to 0, because we want to pause the game. And we will also create a public variable for our pause menu. So public game object, then pause menu, and at the start of our game we will say pause menu dot set active to false, and whenever we pause our game, then we will say let's just copy this. So copy, and we will paste it here. and we will say pause menu dot set active to true. And we will also create two more functions. So let's create a public void resume game. So in this function we will first of all disable the pause menu screen, so let's make it false. Now after setting it to false, we have to also make this time.timescale equal to 1. So let's make it 1. Time.timescale equal to 1. So whenever we press the resume button, our game will be resumed from the pause state. So we will also create a quit function. Let's make a public void quit game. For now there will be only two buttons in our pause menu. So for the quit button we have to just type in application dot quit, and whenever we press the quit button it will quit our game. Now we have created all the necessary functions for our pause menu. Now we have to create this pause menu UI. So let's get back to the Unity editor. Now we will duplicate this game over panel, so press Ctrl D, and we will rename it to pause menu. Now make it active. We forgot to save the script, so let's save it. Now we will also change the text on these two buttons. First of all, let's rename this retry button to resume, and this main button to quit, and change the text to resume, and quit to quit. Now we will make this quit button a little bit smaller, so let's make it 500, and we'll also adjust its shadow. Okay, so now you can also change the background color of our pause menu panel. Okay, so now we will assign the functions to the buttons. Now click on this pause button, and here the game manager object is already assigned. So let's go to the game manager script and choose the pause game function. Now for the pause menu, click on this resume button, and we will choose resume game function. For the quit, we will add the on click event and drag and drop the game manager object and select quit game function. Now our pause menu is ready. So we have to also assign this pause menu to the game manager object, game object. So let's drag and drop this, and we will also disable this by default. Now save, and now we can click on the play button, and let's click on this pause. So you can see that our game is paused. Now if we click on this quit button, nothing will happen because we are in the editor mode. So whenever we export our game to Android device, then we will be able to quit our game. Now let's click on the resume, so it will resume. Hello guys, so in this video we are going to create a main menu for our game. In the previous video we have created this pause menu, so that whenever we click on this pause button, our game will be paused and we can resume or quit. Now we will create a main menu so that whenever we start the game, the main menu will be shown first, and then we can choose to play the game or quit. Currently we will implement only two functionalities, quit and play, but later on we can add high score and options. So to create a main menu, we have to create a new scene. Currently we have this sample scene. You can also rename this to level or game, whatever you want, but we will create a new scene. So let's create a new scene, and we will name it as main menu. Now double click on it to open. Now we want to change the background color of this main menu, so click on this background property and change it to something white. You can make it like whatever you want. We will also create a button here, so let's go into the UI and then button. It will automatically create the canvas and event system. We have already talked about these two, so we will choose screen space camera as our render mode, and we will drag and drop our main camera, and here we will click on this pixel perfect. So for the UI scale mode, we will go with scale with screen size, so it will scale our canvas according to the screen resolution. So we have to provide this reference resolution, so let's say 1920 by 1080. Then because we are in portrait mode, then we have to give 1080 by 1920, and here we will say 0.5. Now we will rename this button to play, so let's rename it to play, and we will make it little bit bigger. Let's go with 300 by 400 by 200. Okay, now we will also change the text on the button, so let's make it as play. We will choose the font style as a bold, and let's increase the font size. We can make it 200, and we can also click on this best fit, so it will fit our text according to the size of this button. Now it is already centered. We will also change its color if you want, but let's change it to completely black. Now we will also give it a shadow. and let's adjust this effect distance. Now you can also change the effect color of this shadow, but this looks quite well. Now we will also give the shadow to our button and change the effect distance. Okay, so now we will also reposition our button. Let's click on the button and okay, so let's click on this move tool and drag it little bit upward. Okay, this is good. Now we will duplicate this button. So let's press Ctrl D and we will rename this to quit, and we will also change the text on the button, quit, and let's reposition it. Okay, so we have only selected the text. We have to select this whole quit button. Okay, so if we want to give a title to our game, then we need to hold display and quit button slightly below. So let's select them by holding shift and we will drag them downwards. We can add the title if we want, and we can also add high score. Now we will make this quit button little bit smaller. Okay, so it's looking quite good. Now you can also add a title by just right clicking on canvas and adding a simple text element. So we will call it as our first game, or you can call it whatever you want, and we will increase its size. It is currently not visible because the text box is quite small. Let's click on this rect tool and we can expand this, and we will also reposition our title. So now click on this text and we will align it to center, both horizontally and vertically. Now you can see that it's looking quite good. We can also change its color. Let's click on this best fit. We can also change its color. Then we can also give it a shadow like this. You can also increase the font size. Okay, let's name it as Endless Runner. Okay, that is good. Now that we have created the main UI of our main menu, then we can save it, and we have to also add this main menu scene to our build settings. So click on build settings and drag and drop this main menu to our build setting, this scene list. So now we can create a main menu script. So click on the script folder, right click, create a new C# script and call it as main menu. Double click on it to open it up in the Visual Studio. Now we are going to use Unity's UI. So add this namespace using Unity Engine .ui. Okay, so we are also going to use the scene management, so let's include that as well. Unity Engine .scene management. In fact, we will not be using this UI Unity Engine .ui namespace, but we are going to use this Unity Engine .scene management. So let's create some functions for our buttons. Let's create a public void play game, and here we can say scene manager .load scene, and here we can pass in the name of our scene. So in this we have to copy the scene name, click on this sample scene, click on F2, Ctrl C, and then we can paste this scene name here. You can also rename this sample scene to label or something like that. And for the quit button, which is quite simple, public, let's just copy it from our game manager script. We have already created this quit button functionality here, so let's copy it. Okay, now we have created the main menu script. So let's get back to the Unity, and we can assign this main menu script to our canvas. So let's assign it. Now click on this button, press Ctrl, and you can select both of them at the same time, and we will add this on click event and drag and drop the canvas. So for the play button, we will choose the play function, play game function, and for the quit button, we will choose quit game function. Now our setup is ready, so we can hit play. This quit button will not work in the editor, but once we export our game to Android, it will quit our game whenever we click on this. Let's click on play. Now we have to also assign our main menu button function that can redirect us to main menu whenever we lose the game. So let's add that functionality also. Let's get back to the game manager script, and here we will create a new function. So let's create a public void main menu, and here we will say scene manager dot load scene, and we'll give it the name of our main menu scene, which is main menu. You have to type in the correct name, otherwise it will not work. So let's copy it from here and paste it. Okay, so it is done. Now save the script and go back to the Unity, and now we can go to the sample scene. and in the pause menu we have a resume and quit button, but in the game over panel we have this main button. So let's add a on click event and drag and drop the game manager game object and select main menu function, and it is done. So now let's hit play, and we can see that we can now go back to the main menu and we can play our game.
Hello guys, so in the previous video we have created this main menu in our game. Now in this video we are going to create some sound effects for our game like jump and hurt. So for this we are going to use a software called BFXR, which is used to make 8-bit sounds. Now to download this software, open up your browser and search for BFXR download, and click on this first link, and from here we can download it either for Windows or Mac. So click on Windows and it will automatically download the zip file. You can install it as you install any other software. It is pretty straightforward. I have already downloaded and installed it, so you can install it, and after installing double click on it to open it up. Now you will see this kind of interface when you open this program. There are various buttons. There are some pre-built sounds that we get out of the box, which is pickup, coin, laser, explosion, power up, etc. We can also create a randomized sound by clicking on this randomize button, and we can also modify these properties for each sound. Currently we are on this jump sound, so you can explore this software more, but for our game we just need two sounds, which are jump and hurt. So we will use this pre-built sounds. Now to create a new sound, we just have to click on this button of the jump or hurt, or whichever you want to create. Currently the jump sound is already created, but I will create it anyways. So click on this jump button to create jump sound, and you can click on this play to play the sound, and you can preview it, and you can also change the properties of this sound. Now I will delete this jump too, and I will use this first one, and I will also create now first of all we will export this created sound effect. Now to export any sound effect, we have to click on this export WAV. Now we will export it on our desktop, so click on save. You can see that our sound is exported. Now we will also create a hurt sound for our game, so let's click on this hit or hurt. You can preview this and modify it as always. You can also choose different synths from here like triangle, tangent or sine, but I will use this default one. So I will cancel this jump and export the hurt sound. So click on export wave, and we will save it on the desktop. Now we can close this program. You can of course explore this more if you want, but it is these two sounds are enough for our game. You can also create some other sounds if you want. So after creating these sounds, go back to the Unity editor, and here in the assets folder we will create a new folder for keeping our sounds. So let's name it as sounds, and in here let's drag and drop these two sounds. So select these two and drag them into the Unity editor, and in the sounds folder it will import it. Now you can preview it from here also by clicking on this play button. Now we have to go into this sample scene. You can rename this scene, but I have not renamed it. You can rename it to level 1 or something like that, but for now it is okay. So we are here in our main game scene. So we will drag and drop these two sounds into our scene. So shift and drag and drop these two, and it will create two game objects, and they will contain this audio source component, and as an audio clip it will be our sound itself. Now these two are created on the position 000, which is totally fine. You can put it anywhere you want, and these components are this component, which is audio source, is responsible for playing this sound. Now our main camera already has a audio listener, so which is used to listen the sound in our scene produced by the audio source. Now once we have created these two sounds, two game objects, then we will go to our player movement script and we will reference it. So let's make a public variable. So public audio source, and we will name it as jump sound. Now let's save it, and after that click on the player. It is compiling, so click on the player, and you can see that the player movement script has this jump sound field. So drag and drop the jump game object into this slot. So now we will play this jump sound whenever our player jumps, and we have to do few settings here. We will shift select these two sound, so shift select these two, and untick this play on awake, so they will not play whenever our scene starts, but they will play whenever we call them from our script. So make sure that this play on awake is not selected for both of them. Now we will also give a tag to our obstacle. So let's create a tag as OBST. You can create a tag with whichever name you want, but I will create this tag with OBST name. Now we will assign it to the obstacle playfab. Now we want to play this sound whenever our player jumps. So in the player movement script, we will play it whenever we tap on the screen. So let's say jump sound dot play. Now it will play the jump sound whenever our player jumps or we tap on the screen. So now we want to play this jump hurt sound whenever our player collides with the obstacle. So let's first of all reference this hit sound. So public audio source, hit sound. Now we want to play if the collided object is obstacle. So copy this if statement and paste it here, and we will say collision.compare tag to obst. Then we want to play this sound, sound dot play, but it will not play the sound currently because we are making time scale equal to 0 in the obstacle script here. So we will not make it 0. So comment it. Now we can go back to the game manager script, and here we can say that if the game is not over, so not is game over. So if the game is not over, then we want to increase the score, and now we will also make the obstacle speed to 0. So to do this, we will say if game manager, because it is a static variable, so we can access it from here also. Game manager dot is game over. So if the game is not over, then and then we want to increase the position of the obstacle. So we will increment it whenever the game is not over. Now after that it will work. So let's save this and go back to Unity. Now we can click on this player and drag and drop this hit sound to this hit sound field. Now click on play, and now it will play the sound whenever it collides with the obstacle. Now we can see that the spawner is spawning the obstacles. So we will also check here if the game is over or not. So let's check if game manager dot is game over. We will include a not sign in front of it. So we want to spawn the obstacle if the game is not over. So paste it here, save this script, and now we can see that it will not spawn the obstacle if the game is over. Okay, so our sounds are working perfectly. Hello guys, in the previous video we have created the sound effects for our game, and in this video we are going to create a high score system for our game. We are going to use Unity's player fraps for this. It is an easy way to store the data on our device locally. So we will first of all create the UI for high score. So let's go into the main menu and expand this canvas object, and in here duplicate this title text and we will rename it to high score. So let's rename it. Now after that we will also reposition it to the bottom of the screen, somewhere around here. Let's change the text to high score and click on this best fit, and let's also resize the text area to make it in one line. And after that let's go into the main menu script to reference this high score text. So create a variable public text high score txt, and after that save the script and let's go back into the Unity and wait for it to compile. And after that click on the canvas and drag and drop the high score into the high score txt field. And now let's go into the game manager script, and here where we are setting the score we will say player prefs dot set int. You can also set float and string. We will give it a string which is a key to access this, which is high score, and we will set it to the current score, and the score is currently float, so let's typecast it to integer. Now we want to change the high score only if the score is less than the high score. So let's say if our score is less than it is greater than player prefs dot get int, and we will get this particular key which we have created, which is high score, and we will also pass in the default value as 0. So whenever our score is greater than the previous high score, it will reset the high score key to that score. Now save this script, and in the main menu script we will say that high score text dot text is equals to player prefs. So let's say player prefs dot get integer, and we will get that key which we have created, which is high score, and we will also pass in the default value as 0, and we also need to convert this into a string. So let's say to string. Okay, so now in the game manager script we have to also typecast the score to integer because it is currently float. Okay, so save the script and go back to the Unity, and let's play the game. We can see that our high score is 0, but we want to also display the high score in front of the actual high score. Let me simplify it. So we will add a high score string in front of the actual high score. Okay, so that's it. Let's save it and go back to the Unity. Now let's play the game. Now we can see that it is currently displaying high score as 0. Let's play the game, and current score is 2, so it is displaying 2 as a high score. Let's try to score more than 2. Okay, let's try again. Okay, so now it is 4, so it will display as 4. And you can reset the player prefs by going into the edit and clear all player prefs and click on yes to delete all the player prefs, and it will reset the data in the player prefs. Hello guys, so in the previous video we have created the high score system for our game, and in this video we are going to export our game to the Android platform. First of all, we have to change some settings. So click on the file and go into the build settings. After that, click on the player settings, and in here we can change the company name. Currently it is default company. You can also change it to whatever you want. You can also change the name of the game, and we can also change the version. So every time you update the game, you may want to increase this. And let's select the icon for our game, and I will select this knob icon, which is default one. So you can also make your own custom icon. Obviously you will make your own icon for your game. You can set it there. Now in the resolution and presentation, make the default orientation as portrait. So our game will be played in the portrait mode only, and we are not going to publish this game, so these settings are currently okay. After that, make sure you have installed the Android build support while installing the Unity, and click on the build, and you can save this APK wherever you want. Currently we are saving it into the desktop and in the new folder, so save it, and it will take some time to build the project. Make sure you have an active internet connection, because it will require the internet connection to build our project. So it may take some more time for you, so please wait while it is building. For now, this beginner series is completed. We may add some extra things in the future, like double jump functionality and simple store system, etc. But for now it is completed as a beginner series. Now let's wait for the Gradle build to complete, and after that you can see that our app is in the new folder, and you can install this app into your Android device, and you can play it on your own device. Okay, so that was it for this video. Thank you for watching this video.